Ready when you
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today, I'm very excited to announce our guest, Ryan Groene. Ryan, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, and hopefully we can add some value to your listeners today.
Absolutely. So everyone, Ryan is a mobile home park owner and operator. And Ryan, I'd love for you to start us out with just a little bit of general background on, what you're doing now and what you were doing before you got into the space.
Yeah, so why I chose mobile home parks and why everybody seems to love mobile home parks in 2021 is the reason I got into it back in 2015, 16, something like that. Before I got into it, I went to school for finance, was taught like you and many of our listeners, hey, go to college, go get a high paying job, and we're going to work 4 years and become successful and live happily ever after. I found out right away that corporate world was not for me. I worked at a Fortune 500 company in the finance department. It was not for me. I was an entrepreneur when I was in college. I just didn't recognize it yet, and I didn't understand that. I was kind of just scared, right? You're scared. You graduate college debt. They offer you a pretty good salary in the finance industry, and it's like, you get used to that. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in college, and then always looked at buying businesses or buying laundromats, car washes, fourplexes, apartment communities. I looked at everything under the sun. And then one day I was actually I was looking at doing a flip on a mobile home because it's a little bit cheaper. Typically, you can buy them for a few $1,000s and then make a few thousand on the back end with not a lot of risk, right? Versus a single family house, that's typically a couple $100,000. So looked at doing that, didn't end up doing that, kind of just went down the rabbit hole of who owns mobile home parks, what are they? Because I knew about them, I just didn't really know too much about them. So went down that rabbit hole, went to a boot camp, and that was 6 years ago, and 9 parks later, and soon to be hopefully cross over the 10 and 11 threshold here soon. But I mean, besides the numbers of parks and just the overall supply and demand and simple economics of it, I simply love it as an asset class because it's affordable housing, and I'm not typically a landlord day in, day out. So
For sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's a great background. I mean, I think it's such a relatable story to a lot of folks who are drawn into real estate, just what we were taught, getting a good job and retiring later on in life, saving up for retirement. And it's just not really a good fit for everyone. So yeah, well, I am really excited to hear more about what you've been doing with mobile home parks. And, let's start out with why they're the best asset class in your opinion.
yeah, so I'm sure, as everybody is aware, if your listeners follow Bigger Pockets, they got their thing going on. Brandon Turner is buying a bunch. So it's kind of a hot asset class now, right? So why I think they're the best is number one, just the simple economics of it. So the supply and demand of affordable housing in great locations. With mobile home parks, there's a diminishing asset class, so a diminishing supply of inventory. There's more parks being destroyed than they're being built because of zoning and just simple, like maybe you or I don't want a mobile home park in my backyard. I don't always want one in my backyard. I mean, it's just the way it is. That's how cities look at it, and that's how a lot of people look at it. And the overall demand of affordable housing, non-subsidized affordable housing in America, is at an all-time high, and you have a supply of mobile home parks that's way down here in good locations. So what that does is I have an endless customer base. Typically, if I'm not a slumlord and I'm providing clean, safe, affordable housing, I can almost charge whatever I want within a certain reason, and I will always have demand. That's what we found throughout the country is pretty much we have demand regardless of where we go, as long as we're in decent metros and good locations. Number two is the overall just economics or the financials of the park. So for every dollar of revenue that we have, we typically spend anywhere from 30 to 40% of that. So our profit margins are 60 to 70%. And what I said earlier is I'm not a landlord on a day in, day out basis. So our model is just to own the dirt, right? So if somebody owns their home, we want them to pay lot rent or pad rent, and they own their home. They're responsible for toilets, water heaters, air conditioners breaking. So that's why I said I'm not a landlord. I'm not getting the 2 a.m. phone calls that their roof's leaking because we don't own a lot of the homes. So we don't do rentals. We just do lot rent only. It's very affordable. If you work minimum wage in America, in most areas of the country, you can afford the lot rent if you own your own home. That's why I love parks, and a lot of it is also a lot of it's not consolidated yet. There's a lot of mom and pop owners that built them from the 50s, 60s, 70s. That's a rare occurrence. The oldest guy I've ever met was a World War II vet. He was 95 and he was still painting one of the trailers. They don't make mobile home park owners like they do apartment owners or anything else. It's a different asset class, but that's kind of very few reasons why I like it as well.
Totally. Yeah. It makes just so much sense with that constricted supply, or yeah, the constricted supply and this the overwhelming demand that we have for affordable housing in this country. So, we know that mobile home parks are getting hotter. Can you speak to, what that does to pricing? Obviously, multifamily folks are moving over to mobile home parks. How does that affect like what you're able to pay and what you have to pay to get a new deal under contract?
Yeah. So when I got into this, when I was 26, I stumbled upon the asset class and I bought my first park when I was 28. So it took me a few years. And I've owned no other real estate. I didn't own a single family house. I didn't own, a 4 unit. I bought a 75 unit mobile home park with a couple of partners. So what's happening is as interest rates have ticked down, cap rates have also came down with it. And also with more money chasing better returns, they've shifted over to mobile home parks because of the asset class and all the different reasons why I went on about earlier. But yeah, I mean, we've seen compression. I mean, I've seen deals get listed at like 4.5, 5 caps, which is multifamily territory. When interest rates are, 3.5, 4% on long-term agency, which is Fannie and Freddie debt, and even the conduit and CMBS debt, that's only a 2-point spread. So it's like, how do you make any money with that? Because typically I'm looking for a 3-point spread from my debt to the cap rate. That way it covers your cash on cash yield of typically north of 10% and all that good stuff. So yeah, I mean, cap rates have come down. It's become ultra competitive. I've been outbid on even off market stuff, quote unquote, a lot recently. And by off market, I mean, we're in contact with the owner directly, but we're not the only person they're talking to. Even if they tell us that, I know they're not. So we've been outbid by, half a basis point to a full basis point percentage higher on the cap rate side. Like I'm talking, $500,000 to $1 million more that we've been outbid on some of these deals. So it's getting crazy, but we're still finding good deals. Like right now we have 5 parks under contract and we're set to close them over the next 2 or 3 months. So I mean, we're still finding deals. It's just getting a little bit tougher or we're paying a little bit more than what we would have in the past, just because a 10 cap is now an 8 cap on these smaller parks. And then those 7 and 8 caps are now 5 and 6 caps on the larger parks. So.
For sure. So would you still entertain getting one of those larger parks at a 5 to 6 cap?
Of course, if I could either see some value on the over the next 5 to 7 years, right? Can I raise rents slowly? Can I infill some units? Can I build back water or sewer? Is there anything left that I can add value to? Because if I can get long-term, non-recourse, stabilized debt, a mobile home park is more recession resistant than most other asset classes. If you look at any of the charts that the bigger firms put out, mobile home parks, even during the 07 to 08 financial crisis, they were aside from self-storage, the debt, there was the least amount of foreclosures on mobile home parks debt. And then even during COVID, like our business we didn't really skip a beat as far as collections go. As long as you didn't have a lot of rentals, we really haven't seen a blip on the radar. If anything, our customers, because they're getting a lot of that stimulus, it's actually been a little bit better during recession because they are contrarian investment, meaning when times are worse, people that are in C and B class apartments can't afford those anymore. So now they got to go live in a mobile home park because they lost their job or they got evicted or whatever. So now they got to go into a park because it's a little bit more affordable. So as times get worse, our asset class gets better. So yeah, I mean, business is still good as usual.
Yeah, for sure. And just on that note, one thing that you mentioned, what do you anticipate happening? How are you preparing for the end of like the stimulus funds?
Not really preparing at all. I mean, honestly, if people have owed us a lot of money and they weren't able to get assistance, we've moved forward with evictions or non-renewing the residents. A lot of our residents are on month-to-month leases. So we'll non-renew them. We give them 30 days to move their home. If they don't move their home, we'll file eviction. And unless our property is backed by by Fannie or Freddie, then there's been the moratorium. But really not preparing at all because our collections have been, a little bit the same or even a little bit better in certain instances. So I really, we're not preparing. It's just, I hope people have jobs because most of our people are on disability, Social Security, retired, or they're starting out, or they're working somewhere where they're making, typically under $40,000 or $50,000 a year. So we're, and like I said, our lot rent's affordable. It's anywhere from 200 all the way up to like 400. So which is very affordable. When the 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom rent in America, I think the average is like what, over $1,000, I think, on a monthly basis.
For sure. Okay, so you touched on something that I want to circle back on, which is having parks that have mortgages that aren't backed by Fannie or Freddie. So are those parks that have mortgages on them, or are they? I'm just curious how they're financed.
Yeah, so I've done every form of doing a deal when it comes to mobile home parks. We've paid cash. I've done a master lease option to purchase, done seller financing, done like a commercial local bank financing as well. So yeah, the properties that are not that we didn't pay cash for, or we didn't do like some type of creative financing, like master lease option to purchase or seller financing, we typically, depending on the deal size, we will use a loan broker because they're worth their money. Typically, they know who to go to on certain deals and they know who to call. But if it's smaller than $1 million, typically we'll just like Google, if we haven't owned anything or we don't know a lender in the area, we'll just Google like the banks and we'll just start picking up the phones. We typically have 3 questions. Hey, I'm so-and-so, we're looking to buy a mobile home park. Do you guys loan on those? It's yes or no. If it's a no, will you consider it? And then that's how we typically get our deals, is just finance locally, which is recourse, which I'm fine with. It's just a part of owning real estate. It's a recourse loan typically on me and my business partners, as we're sponsoring the loan typically, and we're fine with that. And those rates we just closed the deal like 90 days ago or within the last 90 days. And rates are typically for commercial smaller banks are in between 4 and like 5% right now. They've came up a little bit, but we just did a deal 4.5, which is not terrible, right? I mean, it's still at all-time lows. So if you're thinking about getting into real estate and you're like worried about your debt going up, then lock it in now because interest rates are probably going to go up sometime in the future. There's no way that they can. I mean, I guess they could stay where they are, but I mean, they can go down, I guess, but that's even better. So
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for that overview. And would you go ahead and tell us what some of the sort of challenges, tell us some of the things that you've had to do in order to turn these mobile home parks around, or, improve the living situation there?
yeah, so typically challenges are could be an array of things. One thing you can never fix is your location. So that's number one for me. And I've said it multiple times. That's how we look at deals. I want the best location and I want the worst park. That's what I want, right? So we're not buying in like bad neighborhoods typically. I'll buy in working class, blue collar neighborhoods that are a little bit like not necessarily rough, but like I want to own in the best locations because our residents want to live in those school districts. They just want safe, clean, affordable housing. And that's what we're there to provide. So as far as like challenges that we faced, typically it's collections. So what we'll do is if there's a back due balance when we take over, I typically don't care about the back due balance. I give them one chance. I give everybody the same speech. I say you get one chance. We're starting with a fresh slate. Pay your rent, keep your yard looking nice, follow the rules, and you'll never hear from us as the landlord. Like literally, we'll never bother them. So I give everybody the same speech. That's most of the problem is collections, and then actual just rule enforcement as far as keeping their yard clean, not having junk everywhere. Because unlike apartments, people can hide stuff in their homes. With mobile home parks, typically a lot of times they have broken down cars, they have their appliances get put outside and they never get taken to the dumpster. So that's a lot of times what we're dealing with. And grass cutting, we don't cut the grass, so it's just rule enforcement. So that's what we've done from a tenant basis. And then as far as like the actual deal specifics of the park, it could be infrastructure issues with the water or sewer. We bought a park that had a contaminated water well. So what we did was we connected to city water. We knew city water was right out front. Obviously, there's a financial If the deal's got to make sense in order to support that financial cost, but it's well worth it. So we've done that before. Bringing in homes to vacant pads to increase the overall occupancy in the NOI. Some other challenges that we faced is just local jurisdiction, believe it or not. So like I was talking about earlier, most cities and counties don't like mobile home parks and they don't want you there. So I've been told multiple times that, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to shut you down. I've had multiple conversations with code enforcement guys that are like, hey, you got X, Y, and Z that you need to fix, and here's what you're going to do. And then a lot of times the city officials, they're either uneducated or they're just ignorant to the fact that they just don't know what they don't know. And a lot of times we're grandfathered in. So our zoning and our rules are a little bit different than that Class A or single family housing development that just went up, right? So a lot of times when we face challenges when we bring in homes as far as a zoning perspective, right? So if we have a tight park, we might lose a lot when we bring in these bigger homes and these modern homes. So that's typically what we face is government regulation and then just tenant-based issues. So those are all fixable. Sometimes the government base you can't fix without getting an attorney involved, and that's like the last thing I want to do.
For sure. So just to touch on the, why the jurisdictions don't like mobile home parks. Can you just expand on that? Is it just because of they don't want the NIMBY thing, or is there, what are the other reasons why jurisdictions don't want them?
Yeah, so it's not in my backyard, and there's all the stereotypes of mobile home parks. I'm in mobile home parks multiple times a month. Sometimes I've been in parks as long as, I've never lived in a mobile home park like some other guys, but I'm in them enough and at my assets enough to where I'm comfortable. So the stereotypes exist, but those typically are not true. There's not meth everywhere and pit bulls and all kinds of crazy things of whatever you think about with a trailer park, right? So the government doesn't typically like mobile home parks because of the residents that live there typically use all of the I don't want to say free, but taxpayer things. Like they use the parks, they use the cops, they use the ambulances whenever there's a problem. They may not have health insurance, so they're not a drag on the county, but they may be from a taxpayer's perspective. And then when you compare the actual mobile home,
really
what
quick,
they pay.
Brian,
Yeah, go ahead.
So mobile home parks I actually don't really know this. They do not pay property taxes, or they do pay property taxes? I'm not totally clear on that. I know there's something about how they're taxed that makes it.
So that's what I was going to go into.
Oh, sorry.
So we as the landlord and the landowner pay real property taxes, right? So we pay whatever the millage rate is in that county or city. But the actual residents that live there versus a single family home that, on a $200,000-$300,000 house, going to pay way higher taxes than what a person living in a mobile home, which is personal property, and it may only be worth, $5,000. So their personal property taxes are probably less than $200 a year. And sometimes, if they're 55 and older, they get the homestead exemption, so they don't actually have to pay taxes, or they pay a reduced amount. So if I have a 100-space mobile home park and each resident is only paying a few $100s a year, and then me as the landlord, I'm only paying, probably a few thousand, that's comparatively to 100 single family homes or 100, unit mobile home or 100 unit apartment building, the tax revenue that they're going to get based on the percentage of the people is way less. So that's why they don't typically like them, because the revenue from that zoning and from that the residents are not that great. So because they typically aren't high income earners as well, so therefore if they live within city limits, they're not paying as much taxes on the income as well that would go to the city or the county as well, or the state even. So that makes sense?
Yes. So just to be clear, so because the mobile home parks are mobile structures, then they don't have to pay property taxes on them. So they're just paying property taxes on the lot. Is that correct?
On the mobile home themselves, on the personal property. So it's like a car. Certain states you pay personal property taxes on your car. It's just like a mobile home. Mobile home are chattel or personal property, right? So it's like I actually have a title right here of a mobile home. So as you can see, it's like a car title, right? So there's taxes based on that, and it's typically not based on the value. It's based on like the NADA value. So that's what I'm saying. The home might be worth $10,000, and that person might make $30,000 and only pay a few $100s, versus the same person or family that lives in a $200,000 house, they're paying real property taxes. So they're getting, and then they're also making more. So they're paying more tax revenue to the
Right.
city. So therefore that city has more revenue overall to use.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting question, right? I think just because we have such a shortage of affordable housing and mobile home parks pay or are affordable housing, and yet, you know, we do still have all these services that the cities and counties and states are providing. So yeah, definitely a bit of a pickle there, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. It's a catch-22, and it's the solution to the answer, but nobody wants to go there. Or it's a solution to the problem, but nobody wants to. We would rather throw up apartments or do something else that doesn't necessarily make sense. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because we are also subsidizing housing for folks. Like there's folks who are, you know, getting extremely deeply subsidized housing. And so perhaps the mobile home parks are maybe sort of like a bridge. So yeah, and we need that bridge housing. So, so, you know, you've obviously been doing this a while. I'm curious if you can, you know, when people are first getting started in real estate, it's not easy, right? And so can you think back to some of your first moves that you made and maybe bring to light some of those stories about, you know, what it was like to get started and some of the challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah, the most challenging thing was was actually wiring the money, because you're like, if you've never done something, regardless of what it is in life, there's always that fear factor. What if I fail? What if I do this? What if I do that? There's always that unexpected, right, of what lies ahead. So to kind of counter that, I got really educated. So I spent as much time, just networking as much as possible, listening to podcasts like this to educate myself. I became very, very comfortable with the asset, very, very comfortable with real estate as a whole and as an investment, because it is an investment and a business. So it's not just like putting money in the bank and it's insured. You have the possibility of losing money. You have possibility of getting sued. You have possibility of a lot of things. So you just have to I became educated. That was my number one way to kind of shift my paradigm and shift the risk associated with investing, is getting educated. And then I also partnered with people that had experience. So that offset the risk of actually, like, if I were going to go flip a house or if I was going to go do anything, I would want somebody that has at least some experience, right? Maybe not directly related. It doesn't always have to be directly related to real estate or parks or whatever you're doing. But it's got to be some correlation to where it's like, if you're partnering with a contractor, but he's never flipped a house, he knows how to do all the things that you don't maybe necessarily can do, but you know, he knows construction, right? So it's all relatable to some degree. So that's what I've done to kind of get over the fear and get over the risk associated with buying parks and buying real estate.
Yeah.
And also a driving force for me was just sitting in a cubicle, and sitting in a cubicle versus the freedom of not even being financially free, more just like not associated with sitting at a desk all day, outweighed any cost overall. Plus I was 28 at the time, so I had no kids, I wasn't married, so I had a little bit more accessibility to be a little bit more risky. So
yeah, for sure. There's just a lot there, what you just said.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, so yeah, I definitely can relate to the difficulties with sitting in a cubicle. I just, even though I liked certain aspects of what I was doing as in my field, I genuinely felt like a little piece of me was dying every single day that I just sat in the office.
For sure.
So, yeah. And, just to circle back on something you mentioned. So when you said you partnered, I mean, first of all, education, of course, it is such a great way to reduce the risk that you're taking of course you have to take action, but education paired with action is such a powerful combination, and taking managed risk, right? So who were some of the partners that when you said you partnered with experienced people, were they folks that had been in mobile home parks, and how did you actually structure that partnership?
Yeah. So they actually weren't excuse me, they weren't people that actually had any mobile home park experience, but they had real estate experience. They had owned apartments, they had flipped houses. They were generally, they were my seniority. So I felt comfortable with, they were working professionals that had also owned real estate. So I felt comfortable enough that, they had had enough experience, and that was going to work for me, because I was going to be the driving force of actually operating the park and getting it turned around, because I'd been educated in that, and then everybody was educated from a park perspective. We just hadn't owned anything. So we structured it basically. This was my first deal, and we structured it as an active joint venture, meaning everybody was active in terms of the actual managing the park. So somebody could be doing the books, somebody could be doing the leasing and the leads, somebody could be actually managing the manager or operating the park. There's all kinds of things that go into real estate that are active, that a general partner on a syndication would typically take care of. So we structured it based on, let's say we raised $1 million and I put in 100,000, I would get 10% of the deal. That's how we did it. That's just an example. It was based on what you brought cash wise. That was your percentage of equity in the deal. We actually still own that deal to this day. We're potentially maybe liquidating it here shortly, but we'll see how things go. And that was my first deal, and typically since then, that's how I've done my deals as well. Or active joint ventures. I'm the operator of the park. I'm managing the on-site manager, going to the asset, but I'm also doing, my team doing the books and doing the day-to-day running of the parks, like a general partner GP would in the GP LP syndication structure.
For sure. Awesome. Well, thanks for giving us that overview. I think it's helpful for people to envision how they might, these deals actually get done. So Ryan, one last question before we start to wrap up, and that's, can you think of a story that was, maybe something that didn't go so well, at some point over the course of your, work in mobile home parks, like something where you were like, okay, I learned a lesson. I'm not going to do that again. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Just right offhand, it's the first time I got sued. So and it's not something to brag about, right? So it's definitely not, but it does happen. And I got sued by a contractor. Basically, the lesson was either get it in writing or get something to where basically it was a suit based on undone work that was unsatisfactory to us and was an unpaid bill. So that's essentially what it came down to, was undone work. They put a lien against the property and then they sued us basically 30 days later. And, it had not been finished to our satisfactory and blah, blah, blah. I can't get into it too much just because it was a lawsuit. Another thing was just, getting out. One lesson that I would say is when you buy real estate, go out and actually visit your property, talk with your residents, see the problems that they're facing, especially during due diligence. If you can talk to residents that are, when you're not with the manager, or like if they're kind of like off doing something and somebody can like sneak away and talk to somebody, you're going to learn the ins and outs of the property. Or at least day one when you take over, go talk to people, go post notices, like be with your on-site manager if you can. You're going to learn the property quicker than you would by just driving through it 10 times or at different times during the night or day. That's the number one thing is with real estate. Go out and touch it, go out and feel it, and be there, because there's things that you get from getting behind the Excel spreadsheet that you don't get from just sitting at your desk and sitting at home. So that was probably a lesson learned for me is get out and touch the real estate, because nothing beats that. And you're going to learn way quicker if you're actually out in the field doing it versus just sitting at home.
For sure. Makes a lot of sense. And for the contractor issue, to prevent that in the future, I think you mentioned putting it clearly in writing.
Yeah, establishing something up front to where, hey, we're not paying this until, or have them take a deposit or whatever, right? So, but yeah, or just pay the bill in full and then try to get the work done afterwards. So that's what I would do. So you can't avoid getting sued. You're going to have lawsuits, but you can mitigate the risk by having insurance and just basically caring for people.
For sure. Awesome. Well, so much great value, Ryan, that you provided. Thank you so much. Please give the listeners a way to get a hold of you and anything else you want to share.
They can visit my website, which is themobilehomeparkinvestor.com. You can also put my email in the show notes if you would like. And then, yeah, you can just go to my website. I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias at just my name is my handle. And yeah, reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk mobile home parks, look at a deal, look at JVing, even just give my thoughts on a deal if somebody's interested. So I
Awesome.
appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope you all reach out to Ryan with your mobile home park questions and interests. And Ryan, thanks so much for coming on the show. We'll see you next time.
You're welcome. Thank you.